on the client services branch, the financial administrative services branch, the strategic and operational effectiveness branch, and the legal services branch. It outlined exactly how many staff members there were in June of 2010. I'm wondering if you could provide the committee a breakdown of a similar chart up to date in 2014 for us, so that we just get a bit of an idea of staffing in 2010 and compare it to now. You did talk about the Auditor General's report in 2010, and he did criticize the office for its general ineffectiveness, of course. I'm just wondering if you can explain to the committee specific mechanisms you've taken to address his specific concerns in 2010.
I think I'll turn to the Deputy for those specific comments, 2010 through 2014.
Thank you, Minister. I don't recall all of the recommendations of the provincial auditor. However, one of the areas that he focused on was the call center model that we had in place at the time, and the fact, and the Minister alluded to it in her comments, the difficulty, the challenge that clients had even contacting the Family Responsibility Office to speak about their case, the necessity to, first of all, tell their stories over and over again, and also to face a busy signal rather than even someone to talk to them. And that has, we've introduced in response to those recommendations a case management model which provides a much more direct connection between clients and case contacts.
He did mention that in fact 80% of callers never get through in 2010, and in fact 1 in 7 hang up. What are the stats on that today? In terms of busy signals, virtually zero, because there are very rare occasions when the call volumes are such that all of our lines, even direct lines to case contacts, are occupied, but that happens very rarely. Clients are able to either speak directly with their case contact, and we have a 25% live call standard in the organization, or also leave a voicemail, and we have a 2 business day response standard for that. In terms of call abandonment, which is people do call in, but before they leave a message, they hang up. Our average now is about 10%, and it's understandable that clients may have left a voicemail. They're looking for an immediate response. They're anxious to speak to the case owner. They try again, they hang up, and they may try again. So that figure is, the abandon rate is down to about 10% now. There was also a chart in his 2010 report. It was on page 8 of 19 that displayed the number of calls that failed to get through to the call center. It broke it up into 3 weeks: total calls, answered calls, failed calls, and then the percentage of calls. That's how he got to the point of 80%. Would you be able to provide to the committee any data similar to this, or most recent data that you have from the Ministry or Family Responsibility Office similar to this, perhaps updated?
Yeah, I think we'd be very happy to do that. I did want to point out, Mr. Harris, that the Auditor General did do a follow-up report on FRO in 2012, and he acknowledged at that time that there was really significant progress on several of his recommendations, and that was 2 years ago. But we'll be no doubt happy to provide whatever we can in response.
So I know we want to get into it later this afternoon when folks are here, but the Family Responsibility Office has failed to collect an additional $500 million of outstanding payments. Why is that?
Actually, if we can give you a little sense of what's happening with arrears and outstanding payments. In Ontario, we actually have accumulated all the arrears that have been incurred since, I think it was 1987. So some of these numbers look very, very large. Essentially, we collect the vast majority of the money owed, and the Deputy will give you specific figures. I think it's worth remembering that there are some cases, unfortunately, where people are really bound and determined not to pay. And I've been to the FRO office and I've sat beside caseworkers trying to reach payors. And these are people who unfortunately just don't want to be found. And whether they give not their home address but a commercial address where they're no longer known, that was one case that I sat beside. Phone numbers where the voicemail box is full. Incredible frustration on the part of the workers. They really are like detectives trying to find these individuals. So obviously it's most unfortunate. We want to try and find every one of those payers and make sure that payees get what they are owed. But it is a very, very difficult thing to do in terms of when you're dealing with people who are just determined not to be found. So but perhaps you can, maybe the deputy can give us some numbers.
And I look forward to hearing from the deputy. I guess there was a mention in his 2010 report that it took 4 months before FRO actually took it started its enforcement process. How long would you say now it takes FRO to start that enforcement process?
From the point in time at which we receive a court order, our average, unless the court order has a complication in it that requires it to be returned to the court for clarification, we initiate those cases and begin enforcement in around 30 days compared to the standard or the averages that existed in 2010.
So sorry I interrupted you quickly because I know you talked about arrears, but I don't know if you want to explain, my first initial question on, really the $500 million in outstanding payments and what they're doing to bring that number down, I suppose.
Yeah. First of all, just to put $2.1 billion, which is the total accumulated arrears in some context. Those have accumulated as the ministry.
Sorry, I say that failed to collect an additional $500 million. It is $2 billion, over $2 billion.
That's right. Yeah. These arrears have accumulated over now almost 27 years. Over that period of time, FRO and its predecessor organizations have collected about $12.5 billion in actual payments. The collection of arrears is challenging, in particular with in such a long-standing program. A significant portion of our arrears are within a small number of our cases. $1 billion of our arrears are within 10% of our caseload. They're generally older cases where we have, at different points in time, have exhausted avenues for collection of those arrears. And we're actually doing analysis with a part of the ministry that is responsible for social assistance forecasting, so therefore very deep analytic capabilities to review the cases that have long-standing arrears and to look at opportunities, see if there are strategies that we can follow to deal with those hard to collect cases. There is, we do try to benchmark ourselves with other jurisdictions to see how we are doing. And it is a very difficult comparator to find. In Canada, we are by far the largest maintenance enforcement program. We have almost half of the caseload in the country. We do look at the United States, given their relative volume of cases. They're somewhat more comparable to ours. And when we look at maintenance enforcement programs in North America, including the United States, about 36 jurisdictions have caseloads of 150,000 cases or over. We collect actually more per full-time equivalent employee than any other jurisdiction of that order of magnitude. On that basis, we average about $1.48 million per employee that's collected in FRO, which is a very effective standard or efficient standard, and our compliance rate is a little bit above the average of comparable jurisdictions in North America. So it is, the work is very challenging at the best of times.
So tell me, the minister mentioned about, up at Fro listening to the calls. What changes on the enforcement side of things have been made or what tools have you asked for to step up enforcement in Ontario perhaps since 2010?
We have tried to utilize the tools that we have available to us to better affect. One area that we have and other maintenance enforcement jurisdictions have approached the federal government on is to, not as an enforcement tool, but as a trace and locate tool, to have better access to federal data, particularly Canada Revenue Agency data, and information that's collected by Human Resources Development Canada on new hires, on employees that are being brought into the workforce by employers. If we can't find them, it's very difficult for us to engage in enforcement efforts. And
has there been an official ask of the federal government on that?
It is. It has been an official ask. Two ministers from Ontario have written the Minister of Human Resources Development Canada. I would anticipate that Mr. Jaczek will as well. And there have been formal requests from, I know of at least two other provinces, British Columbia through their Justice Minister, who is responsible for their maintenance enforcement program, and Manitoba as well. And at the officials level, these inquiries have been made probably over the course of a decade, and we've not had much success.
Alberta uses an interest model. They charge interest on outstanding payments. Is this something Ontario has looked at ever?
If there is interest applicable in the court order, then we do apply interest, and there are different ways in which interest is calculated. That is specified in the court order. So if it is not specifically outlined in the court order, and the court order and the methodology is not outlined in the court order, then we don't collect interest.
But in Alberta, the equivalent to Fro actually has the authority to charge interest, and I'll make the assumption that it doesn't need a court order to do so. Has the province looked into asking for the ability to just simply authorize or have the authority to charge interest on these? Because it seems that Alberta has a much more successful compliance rate than Ontario, and I think a lot of it has to do actually with interest being charged, knowing that if you're a deadbeat dad or what have you, knowing that interest is ticking away, you're perhaps more apt to pay. Why hasn't Ontario taken that action? If you talk about asking the federal government for more tools on, employment information, why haven't they done or gone this route like Alberta?
I'm not sure if I have an answer on the history, but I do want to say that you made a point about the compliance rate of Alberta relative to Ontario. I'm not sure if that is the case. If you look at average arrears per case, Alberta is one of the provinces that does not write off arrears. The province of Quebec, for instance, does, so they're not a good comparator. But our average arrears per case are relatively in the range of Alberta. The issue of whether interest should be automatically charged, I don't have enough of an understanding of the Alberta system to be able to speak to exactly under what circumstances they do.
I'm just wondering, we all know that enforcement is a difficult part of collecting things, and I'm just wondering what changes has the ministry made to assist their folks other than making a phone call, and begging for money. I mean, if the phone isn't working, what else are you doing or what other tools are you asking for within the government of Ontario to assist your folks at Fro, to get money owed?
One of the new initiatives that impressed me was the impoundment of the vehicle for 7 days. Because when I was talking to the FRO caseworkers, they said, if you can suspend the driver's license, that is a very good tool to...
when did that get brought in?
That was
You have 2
within...
minutes left.
The impoundment of the vehicle was a relatively new...
Yes, I think it was about 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago.
Could you provide to the committee the amount of impoundments, since implementation that have been done, and perhaps you can also remove the license from someone as well, right? So impoundment of a vehicle for 7 days, and you can actually remove one's license as well, right?
And that's
can you
correct.
provide to the committee, and it doesn't need to be now, just another
Yes.
follow-up question, how many licenses have been taken away, how many vehicles have been impounded just in the last 2 years, I suppose?
We have those numbers.
The one we do have the numbers related to driver's license suspensions. We will have to look into whether the Ministry of Transportation actually breaks out vehicle impoundments by reason, because I'm doubtful that they will have a figure related to FRO specifically, because those impoundments arise out of driver's license suspensions. So if a driver's license is suspended for any reason, including enforcement through FRO, vehicle impoundment.
Quickly, because I know my time's...
The time's up. I'm sorry, we have to move on to the third party. Ms. Forster?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. So I'm